Welcome to Ticker Talk. Today's guest is Peter Ivany.
If you look at life, there's some times where you just know if I get this piece right, the rest will follow. And then you've got to be dedicated 100%. And it's all about learning and exposing yourselves to different things. And sometimes you're not great at one thing, but you put yourself in a different situation, same person, and you really do well.
Probably best known as the former CEO of Hoyts.
I learned pretty well every part of the business. I just fell in love with it.
Took it to being a global company and then famously sold it to the Packers.
I was 42, 43, and I sold out of Hoyts, which is very young.
But his story is much more interesting and deeper than that.
Many things that my father taught me and my mother was you've got no idea what human beings can tolerate, both physically and mentally. And I can just imagine what he would have gone through during that period.
And of course has continued to play a very significant role in the community through philanthropy, arts, medicine, sport.
To me, it's been a privilege to be able to serve the community in various roles and to serve people that haven't had the opportunities. But really, what else can I do to the benefit of a country that's been so good to me?
Really looking forward to hearing from Peter.
Up next on Ticker Talk. Can't wait to hear.
Peter Ivany, welcome to Ticker Talk.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt. And nice to be here.
Thank you. And you are a man of many and varied parts, and we'll come to that during our chat. But let's go right back to the beginning. You were born in Melbourne.
Yep.
To parents, both of whom survived the Holocaust and came to Australia. I mean, tell us how that shaped your life.
Well, it really shaped it completely because when you come out as a refugee into a country that you don't understand, and, you know, Dad came out in 1949 after 8.5 months at Auschwitz. And even though he said he survived it, but he survived at 32 kilos. They had to feed him with an eyedropper, so he didn't overfeed himself. Mum was in a work camp in Vienna, but they all came out with they came out really to start their lives again. So they sacrificed everything for you. So the way I looked at it, and I think my brother was the same, Paul, is that our job was really to pay back to them because they had such a difficult life. So the way we looked at it, we had to do the maximum with the opportunities that we had that they gave us for their sacrifice. And so in our generation, I think that goes for a lot of people in that position, no enablement, no entitlement, work hard and do the best you can. And just do the best you can. And obviously you get no free rides or anything. I went to government schools. I actually chose my own school because my parents didn't know what to do. They wanted to send me to Caulfield High and probably now it's Glenora High. It's a really high-performing high school in Melbourne. But in those days, if you weren't in jail by the year 11, you were the exception. So you pretty well started with hundreds and hundreds of kids. You ended up with under 10. But I decided, because I had a few friends of mine, I think I'll go to Gardenvale Central. And from then I went to Melbourne High, which is a selective school. And I was very lucky and became a prefect. And, you know, just as much as I could, not waste any opportunities. So I think, you know, really respect and really admired the fact they survived, they came through it. And even then, when I had difficult times in business, I reflected back on what my parents went through and it makes you drive through. You get a much broader idea of what other people have to get through to survive. And there's many things that my father taught me and my mother was you have no idea what human beings can tolerate, both physically and mentally. And I can just imagine what he would have gone through during that period.
You don't want to imagine.
10% people survived Auschwitz. How many survived 8.5 months? Very, very few.
Because you have spoken about how that not only that's your inspiration, that's a drive for you
completely.
And it would seem to me that it's not surprising then that, you know, post Hoyts, and we'll come to Hoyts in a second, that you've been driven so strongly in the philanthropic sector, in various ways, giving back to the community, and this idea of giving back and service has been very important.
Yeah, look, I think it's a privilege in a way that I've been in a position where I was 42, 43 and I sold out of Hoyts, which is very young, and it was a very hard 20 years, but I had the opportunity to then have choices in my life. And at that point, I decided I'll spend half of my life in business and still stay in the game. I think it's really important. Keeps you thinking, but also keeps income coming in. And it's important. But really, then what else can I do to the benefit of a country that's been so good to me? And I looked at it that way, and really it's been a privilege to serve. I was lucky enough with Hoyts that it got to be such a global business and second or third in space. And I just knew with the sacrifice that came with that, I wasn't going to do that a second time round. And I'm really lucky that I was young when I did it, and I had these dreams and visions of what we could do with the place, and had a lot of people supporting me, including Sharon, my wife, because without that help, you cannot do it without a stable home life, because you're always away. And so you really appreciate that. And I said, all right, well, how can I change things? I'm not going to do it corporately to that level anymore, because you can only do that once in 20 years, concentrate on one thing. And to me, it's been a privilege to be able to serve the community in various roles and to serve people that haven't had the opportunities. And in a way, what you do with those jobs is people are incredibly well-meaning, but you sort of expand their vision a bit and then you help them find a way to get there, because still, in a way, not as complex and not as difficult as when you go from, owning, say, 30-odd screens to 2,200 and in 12 countries in the world. Yep. So you really know the pathways to get there. So I was very lucky.
The pathway then from your early education to your career with Hoyts, what were those formative years? What did you think you wanted to do? Was it business? Did you have any idea? Or how did you fall into the cinema business?
I think falling into the best description. I know people meticulously plan. I mean, even though they plan, when they're young, who they're going to date and if they're perfect or not perfect, you're sort of 90% is good enough. And when you get the opportunity, go for it. So if you look at life, there's some times where you just know, if I get this piece right, the rest will follow. Yes. And then you've got to be dedicated 100%. But I, after Melbourne High, and Melbourne High was a 4-year course, but I enjoyed it so much, it took me 5. So I did year 11 twice. But see, those things are important pieces in your life.
Yes. Because
I wandered off, I marched in moratoriums, and to my parents, my mother said, well, you very definitively got distracted. But she also, I don't know if you get away with it today, she said, look, you don't have any business skills. You're not that practical. What are you going to do? Stock shelves in Kmart. So you go, all right, maybe Woolworths today. But you sort of really rethink your life. So the next year I sort of, okay, that's the last time that's going to happen. I went for school captain. I didn't quite make it, but I made it to be a prefect. My mother, again, said, don't be school captain. You won't be able to do that in your work. And that was so the night before I had to give my speech. It wasn't the best speech, but I still came 4th out of 12. So I did that. And then from then on, pretty well, didn't really fail at anything since at a major level. Then I decided, after I did my HSC, I got into law, lasted a week, said not for me. And then, of course, an obvious progression for any businessman is to do sociology for a few years. But anyway, but in between that, I went to Israel in 1973. As fate would have it, there was a war during that period. It was the most incredible year of my life. And I can say, except for being married, that was the best year of my life.
Why?
Because I just learnt so much. And it's all about learning and exposing yourselves to different things. And sometimes you're not great at one thing, but you put yourself in a different situation, same person, and you really do well. And kibbutz was fantastic for me, leadership. But then when the war came, maybe I was just so easy dispensable. They only had 6 of us working. And I was driving the trucks with this Arab guy from the local village. So obviously thought, well, okay, they're the most 2 dispensable people we've got. But anyway, so we drove the truck and we bought the food because everybody else was working or in the war. Because when I went back there 30 or 40 years later, and you really see that they were within 2 kilometres of us, and you could actually see it in front of the bomb shelter. It was a complete surprise attack on Yom Kippur, October the 6th, this time October the 7th. And on October the 6th, after a bit of intifada, but a lot of victory in wars where they were completely surprises. More people died in the 73 war, where the population was a third or a quarter than died during this current war. So 3,000 people died pretty well. It was only a 3-week war. And so anyway, I had the responsibility with this Arab guy who's, one of the Palestinians living in Israel in the place called I can't remember it now, but Tulap, just down from us. And we were picking up the food for the kibbutz every day, watching the bombs go over our heads. And just, at 18, you're a bit deranged. You think you're indestructible, and picked the food up. But I felt very proud of the fact that that was a job they gave me and I was responsible. So then after the war, I worked with an elderly retired kibbutz electrician who was sort of way past his prime, and we had to wire up all the bomb shelters because the army, basically in the bomb shelters at night, there was no lights, there was no energy, there was nothing. They were overgrown, completely surprised us. And so I was responsible for, we had I think 20 or 30 Scandinavian volunteers, and I was responsible for wiring up the bomb shelters. And the electrician lasted barely a week and got pneumonia. So then I was responsible on my own. And on top of the fact that I'm a bit colourblind, which is not great when you're doing with electrics, with putting wires together.
Red or blue.
Red or blue or green, particularly red and green, not my best, easy to beat in snooker and billiards. But yeah, we got through it, We wired up 12 bomb shelters and they sort of, in a way, helped make you. But then, I did survive it. And then I went back and, as I said, I went back to law school because at least I got in. And I walked around the law faculty and this is just not a place for me. So then I went and did sociology and politics and economics at Monash University. I went back to playing football, so that was important for me. Yeah. And I played for a few teams until they worked out I wasn't that good, but mainly I played for Ajax, and that's where I think I played just over 100 games. Yes. And then went back to Habanim, which was the kibbutz, the movement that basically started me off to the youth movement that I got to Israel. I became head of camps because that's the group that constructed the campsites and did that stuff. So the higher intellectuals went and did the learning pieces and the other stuff. But I enjoyed that because we basically just built all the camps and did all that. And so I really enjoyed that. And then I went through and did an arts degree and then I went and worked for the public service. That's why it's a very different route.
Sure, yeah. But at some point, when you've met your wife, you're married, I presume at the stage you come to Hoyts. So you were an arts graduate, a law graduate, you were working as a lawyer, but then your father-in-law...
Yeah. No law.
Yeah, okay, no law.
All my law I've learnt on the job. So actually I'm not a bad lawyer now. Yeah.
Excellent. So as long as you haven't broken too many. So Leon Fink...
I've never been in court either.
Was your father-in-law?
Yeah.
And he was running Hoyts.
It didn't quite work that way.
Okay, well, how did it work?
Yeah, well, so I went to I worked for the health department first. Then I got married, and I thought, looked around me and said, this probably won't work. I got a higher job in the public service.
You mean not the marriage, but the working for the health
working for the health department,
okay.
Yeah. I said,
just to clarify that for any...
And then I went and did an MBA, and at the same time went to Kodak. Yes. And then at Kodak I was there for a couple of years, and I was going okay there. Then with my father-in-law said, I think we better go and find your business. You've got enough skills. You've got enough education. Let's see if we can find something. Anyway, so the four partners, they put in a bid for Hoyts. The normal people was Kerry Stokes, Murdoch, Packer, for whatever reasons, they didn't want it. It was on the market for a fair while. A lot of people concerned about video. And in the end, our family, through Leon Fink, acquired the company off 20th Century Fox. 20th Century Fox was then acquired by Marvin Davis, an oil tycoon out of Texas. And then Rupert Murdoch bought half of it, and they decided to divest themselves of the Australian and New Zealand arm. And so my father-in-law with his other three partners that had the Mid-City Cinemas in Melbourne and the Cinema Centre, maybe they just had Mid-City then. They decided, that's a story in itself. Yes. They had a few theatres on their own and they decided to make an acquisition bid. They did it with Village, originally in Greater Union, the Foreign Investment Review Board. At that time, Greater Union was half owned by Rank from the United Kingdom. So therefore they had to do it by themselves. They did it with Wardley's, Hong Kong Bank. They helped finance the acquisition. They didn't put 1 cent of money into it. They basically they sold off half of the drive-ins that they didn't own, particularly New South Wales and South Australia, which actually paid for the acquisition, and they sold off New Zealand to Amalgamated Chase, which started Chase Corporation. And and Greater Union has done wonderfully well, and he's my neighbour, Alan Ridge, because we sold the land of places like Bass Hill and, French's Forest worth a lot more money for real estate than as a drive-in.
This is the Bass Hill
and they're all 50
drive-in.
acres, Bass Hill Drive-in.
I remember going and watching a couple of films there with my father, yes.
Yeah, so a lot of history.
Yes.
So we basically, that paid for the acquisition.
Yep.
And then my father-in-law said to me, well, is this something you'd like to do? And I remember walking down Burke Street and I had a look at it and I just felt this will be my destiny. I just felt this is a business that matches my skills with what I want to do and I'll be able to really do something here. And I just had this sort of, I don't know, I felt like I just landed. And it was not a smooth ride for the next few years in many ways, but in other ways it was just terrific for us. And but I just knew in myself that this was a changing time in my life.
Did you have an interest in film?
Loved film. Loved film.
So even at that stage?
Loved reading.
Yes.
Loved it. And still love it.
And how old were you when this happened?
I was 26.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
so, and I was really lucky and, and I had some interesting first jobs there, but I learned pretty well every part of the business, but I just fell in love with it.
Now, you've told a story somewhere else, I remember hearing, that at some point it got to, right, who's going to be the CEO?
Oh, yeah.
And so you thought, well, I'll show some initiative. Yeah. And you had business cards made.
Yes.
With that title on it.
You remember that, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So tell us about that. How on earth, by the way, did you get away with it? And well done. But tell us that, please.
So what had happened is that we were with the other three partners from 1982 to 85. Right. And then Leon came to me, and I was the only one of our family that was working in the business, and said, I think we should buy them out. But at the same time, Kerry Packer had put a bid in. Ironically, many years later, ended up buying the business with James. So that's its own story. And he said, okay, I think we should buy it, get the money. Now, the most I'd ever applied for before was like a 70 or 80,000 loan. And I had to then get the finance person on side for us to get the money. And again, we put nothing into it except for our equity in Hoyts. And I remember I was trying really hard. We were sort of getting somewhere, but I needed Leon behind me clearly because, at that stage I was a bit older. I think I was 28 or 29 because actually I was 31 by that stage. And I remember one of the bankers told Leon, I think you've given a boy a man's job. And I think that was appropriate, but I never stopped trying. And I just kept at it. In the middle of the night, I'd just do spreadsheets or versions of spreadsheets in those days. But Frank Walter, as a company secretary, really helped me. Anyway, so we got to the point where we're up to final bids and Kerry Packer gave his bid in. And Leon and I, and by that time Michael and Bruce were with me, and said, you've got to go and talk to Jack Lieberman, who was Leon's brother-in-law, to say, well, if you're going to sell it to the Packers, why wouldn't you sell it to us? And it was pretty hard as a family to say, yep, fair enough. But they made two specific rules. Number one, they had 60 days to get the money. And, I was sort of battling away there, but we sort of got there and him and his relationships with the Commonwealth Bank in Melbourne got us over the line, but at least I did a lot of the preparatory work. And the other thing that they put in, which is a great clause that I've still used when I do acquisitions, although there's don't make me look like an idiot clause, which means that if you sell it within a year of the acquisition and up the price a bit, and by the way, I've fallen the other way of this a couple of times because a couple of people have sold bits and then all of a sudden the rest went for a higher price. And so we put those two clauses in. We had a really limited time. We really had no assets, so they were pretty confident that Kerry would pick it up. So it was just like, we're doing the right thing by the family, but what chance have they to
going
pick
through
this
the
up?
motions?
And he was the youngest of the family and they'd already achieved a lot and their kids were already in the business and they were at another stage. And we got over the line. And we didn't have enough money because one of the bankers, and who unfortunately I had to deal with later when we had various problems, just gave us everything but the last $5 million we needed to run the business. So then we had to go to Credit Lyonnais in their Netherlands office, which has now been written up, very famous, no paperwork, and they advanced a lot of money to people like Coralco and some of the other new junior Hollywood independent heavyweights in the film business. They got a bit carried away with the film industry. Yeah, so basically we had a few holidays with them. We went over there a few times. We bought their... And they lent us $5 million, and later they found out there was no documentation. And that sort of got us over the line, so we had enough money to run the business.
Wow. Well, that looks like a great opportunity to have a quick break, and we'll be back to talk really about the Hoyts years and philanthropy.
Sure. Thanks
Peter.
Max. Appreciate it.
Well, that was pretty amazing, Peter Ivany. And in fact, I think it was there is so much content, Matthew, we've decided to split this into 2 episodes. So we will be back in 2 weeks with the next part of the Peter Ivany story to really talk about how he built Hoyts into a global business, how he sold the business to the Packers, and really what he did next with the rest of his life, having really retired at the age of 46.